The bans keep coming, and hunters and shooters are feeling the pressure. What happens when the tools of your sport are taken away?
This latest Liberal NDP gun grab has put their training and competition in jeopardy.
This episode, I'm joined by 2024 Ep3 champion Melody Philistin and overall PCC champion Taylor Reich.
Ep3 kind of means the world to me.
Plus, Kate Rendell brings us an epic social segment, and then Greg Rensmag from the Wild Sheep Society gives us the 411 on what they are up to. This episode of Wild Talk is brought to you by Aventura Self-Heating Beverages. Enjoy your adventure with the comfort of a hot drink anywhere, anytime. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Timber Stoves, the original wood pellet patio heater. And Wild TV Plus, stream the best outdoor adventures on all your favorite devices. We are back with more Wild Talk. I'm your host, Steve Hamilton.
We are back at it for another social segment on Wild Talk.
We're back with more Wild Talk. This is a timely episode. In December, as we record this, we've just seen a ton more new bannings come down when it comes to firearms, adding them to another list of prohibited, what they're calling weapons. They're not really weapons, they're firearms, they're tools. And as we're going to get into, we want to try and make sense and break this down for the layperson that doesn't really know too much about what's going on. A lot of the stuff may be redundant for the hunters and the sport shooters that are watching and listening to this. So bear with us. This is hopefully going to be an enlightening episode, and we're going to dig right into it. We're going to dispel some myths, answer some questions, and just kind of peel back the layers of the onion. So for this episode, I've got Melody Philistin joining me from Calgary. And yeah, like I said, this is an episode that I think is really, really timely, and we're just going to jump right into it. So Melody, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
It's a frustrating episode that we have to have. We're
it is
continually seeing these emotional bans put into place by a government that doesn't seem to understand the implications of what this is doing to the hunting community, the sport shooting community, small businesses around the country. But before we really dig into that, I've kind of digressed already because it's a frustrating topic. So Melody, let's dig into you a little bit so our guests have an idea of who you are. Please tell us who you are and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, my name's Melody Philistin. I'm an Ep3 shooter in Canada. I shoot handgun and PCC. I'm currently the female national champion. 2025 is supposed to be a big year. We have PCC World, pistol caliber carbine, in Czech Republic coming in May, and then Handgun Worlds in South Africa coming in September 2025. As you know, because of this ban now, that's pretty much every PCC on the market in Canada is on that list. So that's going to be a big, it's a big wall when you're trying to go to Worlds.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about what happened there. I saw a post, you were brought to my attention. A couple people messaged me and said, hey, check out this post. It was a graphic that you'd made up talking about how you've put all this time, money, and effort into practicing with a certain firearm, and now that's gone from you. Talk about that, right? What went down?
Yeah, that to be honest, I was kind of blindsided by that, and I think like a lot of people in the gun community were. We've been prepping for Worlds for years now. They only happen every 3 years. This is the first time PCC Worlds is coming up, and it's the same year as Handgun Worlds. So 2 in 1 year is pretty big deal. But yeah, just now with our guns being banned as in can't be used, can't leave the safe, We can't train with them. We can't travel with them. It's just like the sport in Canada is gone, just because of this announcement of this addition to the OIC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those that don't know, the OIC was the Ordering Council that put through with the stroke of a pen 4 years ago originally, where they swept 1,500 different cartridges, calibers, incarnates of what they're calling assault weapons, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And they're banning rocket launchers and stuff that the average person doesn't have. But the frustrating part is we're seeing things like 22s, target rifles banned. We're seeing some of Granddad's old heavier cartridges based on the potential energy that they can shoot. One of the scariest parts on that to me is where they say that capable of producing more than 10,000 joules, right? That's a lot of energy. But the key phrasing there that I picked up on all those years ago is where it says it was capable of. It doesn't say repeatedly. So if you want to hot load a 12 gauge shotgun or anything, in theory, it's capable of that. So it's a really broad implication there. So what I want to talk about specifically today is they added, I think it was 324 new firearms to the ban list. So what I noticed was a lot of these were 22s, and for lack of a better term, they were banned based on how they looked. And
100%.
a lot of these ones are used by people like yourself. They're sport shooters, and they're using them in the Ep3 competitions. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what's Ep3? We're going to use a lot of phrasing here that some people might know. So what is Ep3 before we dig too deep?
So IPSC is International Practical Shooting Confederation. It's a worldwide, internationally recognized sport.
Right.
It combines like shooting and accuracy in a stage. So you'll kind of have walls and targets, some moving targets set up, and it's basically how fast can you shoot that stage and how accurately. And
Right.
then your time versus points, you get your score.
Right. So realistically, a firearm that's going to be used in these is going to be an easier recoiling, not as hard to shoot, right?
Usually, yeah, like it'll take some tuning. It depends on the firearm. So PCC is one of the disciplines where it looks like a rifle. It is a rifle, but it shoots pistol caliber, so they're 9 mil bullets. And even though no PCC has ever been used on any battlefield anywhere in the world, that has been one of the guns that are on the list.
I've been sport shooting a long time. I've hunted for over 20 years, but pretend I'm somebody sitting on the sidelines. I know nothing about firearms. So explain to me why these ones that are now on the list aren't military grade. What's the definition of military grade? Explain the difference to me.
First of all, we haven't had any fully automatic rifles in Canada since the 70s. There have been no, like when you call an assault rifle, that's generally what people are talking about. It's something that can shoot full auto, but we don't have that. We haven't had that for years. When this list that comes, it seems there's functionally no difference between some of the guns that they say are okay and some of the ones that they've deemed as assault rifles on this list. They just look different. Like, like black scary guns. Some of these, like the 22, like the GSG 16, it's a pop can plinker. Like that's the kind of the first gun you get as a kid to shoot pop cans with. They come in all sorts of crazy colors, like it's a toy. But because it looks like a mini AR-15 or assault rifle, if to someone who doesn't know. So somehow those ones have also made their way on the list.
Yeah, it's about the furniture that they're wearing, right? It's if you compared it to a Honda Civic, for example, you get a base Honda Civic off the lot, and it's just fine to drive. But you take that same Honda Civic, and you put a spoiler on it and you put different wheels on it, and body kit functions the exact same, does nothing to the performance of it, and that one is banned. You guys were actually mentioned in the House today by your MP.
Taylor and Melody from my riding are national champion sports shooters who compete internationally. They're supposed to represent Team Canada on the world stage in Czechia. They put years of hard work into training and competing. But this latest Liberal NDP gun grab has put their training and competition in jeopardy.
Yeah. He brought it up because we've been training for years for World Shoot. It's coming up, and now our guns have been put on this ban list for the reason, and then the reason they say that is because they're battlefield weapons, they're military grade, they're assault rifles, and that's not the case. It's a misconception of what the firearm actually is. For us, it's a piece of equipment for a sport. It's a tool, It's imagine being a golfer. You're one of the best in the country. You're going to the World Golf Tournament that happens every 3 years, and then they say, you know what, these golf clubs, they can be used as a weapon. So sorry, you're gonna put them away for good. Well, maybe to a criminal it could be used as a weapon, but to a golfer, that's his golf clubs.
These are used for sports shooting and for training. And another scary part about it is this list doesn't have every firearm on it. It keeps getting changed. So how does this uncertainty, obviously you're going to have to adapt if you want to continue this from the firearm you're losing with the stroke of a pen to possibly go with another one. But they keep changing that list and they keep moving the goalposts. So how does this affect you for your practicing?
That's kind of the problem right now, is we're pretty stuck. The Ravens were a newer firearm into Canada, and now that they've made the list, the FX9s are on the list. We don't really have any more options for PCC. You can get a conversion kit for your handgun if you have one.
Okay.
So PCC used to be the only way to get back into IPSC, because now since the handgun freeze as well, you can't purchase a handgun in Canada. You can't transfer them. If you didn't have one, you're never going to have one now. But PCCs, because they were non-restricted, that discipline became very popular because now that's how people can actually get into the sport and enjoy it. But now that PCC is gone and you can't buy them anymore, this is going to kill IPSC in Canada, essentially. That was kind of the only way you could get into it at the time. They even came out with a PCC black badge course, right? So you could start shooting, and you can't do it anymore. So I don't know, for training and stuff now, we're still kind of trying to figure out what we can do. Dry firing at home is really what we're left with. We've talked about getting a conversion kit for the handguns, maybe. They're not ideal, but just maybe to keep fundamentals.
So how does someone like you, who is vetted, you've got your RPAL, you're checked daily by these police systems, how do you respond with the police service, because you use firearms in a controlled, safe sport like IPSC? How do you feel about that?
The thing is, no matter how many laws and bans that they put out, it's not, the criminals don't care, and that's why they are criminals. The only people that this ban is going to affect are the law-abiding citizens who follow the rules. Criminals don't acquire their firearms legally anyway. So if you make them so you can't buy them in Canada, you can't trade them, you can't sell them, it doesn't matter, because the Toronto Police Association was saying it was 85% of their guns that they seize are smuggled in from the
smuggled
US.
across the border.
None of these felons have a license. They never went through the licensing process. So come out with as many laws as you want. It's not, it doesn't affect them.
No.
That's why they're criminals. But
That's
then
right.
people like us are being punished because, well, we follow the law. Unfortunately, that's going to come down on us.
It's a dangerous precedent, right? It's punishing the law abiding for what the criminals are doing. How does these new bans that are put through change your perspective and your perception of gun ownership in Canada? Like, what's it do to your thought process?
It's it's unpredictable. Like it's, we still have our handgun. Whatever we have is what we have. Um, Handgun is, we've been training for a long, long time for that. But now, like, we're worried about what's going to come of that in the next year. Like, are we going to be able to shoot worlds? Is that going to become prohibited too? Like, I don't know. I've poured my entire life and soul into this sport. I love it. The community in it is amazing. I've never met people so welcoming and friendly and kind and
Mm-hmm.
fun in my life. Like I've never been part of such a fun and good community, and like that's not just IPSC, like that is just the gun community. But for some reason we're painted as these like scary, crazy people with guns.
That's what I hear about the IPSC community and the three gun community. I don't do that, but every time I go to the range as a as a shooter to sight in my hunting rifle, if there's 3 or 4 people there, if there's 2 people, 10 people, everybody comes over and they talk back and forth, and you end up leaving. You may not know their name, but if you saw them in Superstore, Walmart, wherever, you're going to say hi and you're going to have something in common. There's
Yeah.
just such it turns into a family, it turns into a
Yeah.
community of
100%.
like-minded enthusiasts. As we wrap this up, what I want to know is be a straight shooter here, for pardon the pun, but do you think this has any positive effect on suppressing crime, or do you think this is a symbolic move by the government?
I don't think this is going to affect crime in any way at all. The law-abiding gun owners, sport shooters or not, anyone with a license, they're not the problem.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to end it, Melody. So huge thanks for joining me today on such short notice, and we're going to stick by you and see what we can do to help along in this fight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad we got to talk about it.
I'm joined for this segment of Wild Talk by the president of the Wild Sheep Society, Greg Rensmag. We're going to talk about some great things that they've got going on with their organization this year and all the years coming up and behind. A little bit of behind the scenes, a little bit of what they got coming up. So first off, Greg, huge thanks for joining me today.
No problem. Glad to be here.
So first off, tell me about the Wild Sheep Society.
It's going to be a loaded question, but we'll keep it short and sweet. We're a nonprofit registered society dedicated to the protection and enhancement of wild sheep and wild sheep habitat throughout the beautiful British Columbia. We were formed in 1992 by a group of dedicated folks. Most of them were based out of Lillooet, actually, and people that seen that they needed something to be done with the sheep because populations in their areas were struggling, and they're continuing to struggle today. And BC is we're fortunate. We have 4 different types of sheep. We've got Callies, Rockies, Dals, and Stones, and we kind of have a duty to the world to do a better job of figuring out what's wrong with the sheep and protecting and enhancing their habitats, and just making life better for them.
Yeah, and some of those people that helped found the organization are still involved today. Like, we don't need to name drop, but you and I both know that these people, going on 30 some odd years now almost, have been up to their necks in incredible projects and just passion for our outdoor spaces and preserving it for the next generation. So you touched on a little bit about saving the sheep. What was the catalyst that they found in the Fraser River area that said, hey, you know what? We need to do something?
In the Fraser, the population it started dropping drastically. Like, in the 90s, there was at good times, estimates of 3,000 sheep on the river, and now, we were down to 800 at one point, roughly, and turned out to be Movi, which was introduced by domestic sheep farmers. And yeah, it just crippled the populations, and it's kind of been our flagstone project for several years now. We've dumped, us and our partners, like millions of dollars into the landscape along the Fraser, doing a lot of test and remove, and numbers are bouncing back substantially, which is great to see. Like we've this last year's winter count, some of our treated populations are up to 70 lambs in 100 ewes, which is outstanding numbers.
Yeah, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
You guys got a couple of big events coming up. The first one being it's in February, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So it'll be January 31st and February 1st. We'll be heading up to Dawson Creek for our northern fundraiser, which, man, that's a good time.
So let's talk about the south one. It used to be in Kamloops. It's now moved to Penticton. What dates are that?
So that is going to be February 20th through 22nd in a beautiful Penticton, British Columbia. And there's potential that we'll have sheep in pens close to the show that might be able to visit.
That's unreal.
It's not a guarantee, but we're working on hopefully we can make that happen.
Yeah, the chance for a lot of these people that are coming to these show to actually see a live sheep in the wild. Yeah, it's penned up, but it's still a wild sheep. And that's where your membership dollars are going, right? It's almost a full circle type thing. I'm donating to this, I'm showing up to this event, and I get to see the results of my money on the ground. And that's unreal. So what can our people and our guests look forward to at Penticton? Is it the same as Dawson?
No, Penticton is loaded. Dawson's it's a short, sweet, great time, great fundraiser, great people. And then Penticton it's got all of the above. It's got the good time, it's got the show, it's got an exhibitor hall full of vendors. Like I think we're up near like 70 some odd booths. Like it's the who's who of the backcountry hunting. Like you can walk into there and spend 2 days wandering around, chatting with everybody, learn so much from just the vendors and their experience and the dedication from these folks. And we've got people coming from the States and different vendors from down there. It's loaded. There's nowhere else in Canada you have those vendors. The official name, the Mountain Hunting Expo part, you can get a day pass for it, or you can get a weekend pass where you do everything. But we're kicking off on Thursday, February 20th there. We did it last year and it was a hit. The Drink for Dolls whiskey tasting event, hosted by our friends there at Okanagan Spirits, and we may be releasing our 4th installment of our whiskey. This will be after Doll Sheep. It's going to be the Tatsicini Glacier whiskey.
As we wrap this up, where does someone find tickets for each of these events?
So you can find tickets for both of the events at wildsheepsociety.com. More specifically, if you want the Salute to Conservation, it's wildsheepsociety.com/salute to conservation, and that's the number 2, not the word. And then also for the Northern fundraiser, it's wildsheepsociety.com/northern-fundraiser. Tickets are still available for both. The Northern has very limited tickets.
That'll sell. Thanks a ton for your time, and I look forward to seeing what's coming up next from you guys.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Rundle. Thanks for joining us here on Wild Talk. Now, today's conversations on the show, they're a little bit heavy, must-have conversations, but a little on the heavy side. So we're here to try and lighten the mood up with some crazy animal encounter videos we've pulled from the web. So let's check them out in 3, 2, 1, let's go.
World. That's so scary. I'm afraid to move.
not sure as I'm gonna be.
Oh my god.
Oh! Oh!
That is not what you wanted.
Oh!
Now it won't lock because he.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed those videos. They're definitely a very good reminder to keep your distance and stay safe. I'll see you next time on
This episode of Wild Talk, we are digging into the recent bans of firearms that we're facing here in Canada. It's December as we record this, and I'm joined for this segment by Taylor Reich. And I'll let Taylor give a little bit of a background on who he is and why this is such a mind-boggling situation that we're in. So, Taylor, first off, a huge thanks for joining me today, and please let our listeners and our viewers know a little bit about you and your background.
Well, thanks for having me on, Steve. Nice to meet you as well. My name's Taylor. I'm an IPSC competitor. I'm a shooter at heart. IPSC is just the sport that I'm most focused on at the time. But I used to be big into 3-gun, and that kind of ended on the first OIC. So I transitioned over to IPSC, along with a bunch of other friends who were pretty high-level 3-gun competitors, and we were all very competitive guys. And so we kind of transitioned over to IPSC and started doing really well. I'm now the 2-time national champion for handgun, 2-time national champion for PCC, and maybe the only PCC champion at this point. We'll see. But that's kind of a little bit of my background. I've been shooting competitively since 2016. I started dabbling in it seriously since 2019. I've been a gun owner since 2013, and competitive shooting is what really helped me maintain my firearms license. To be honest, I was ready to kind of give it up because I would go out once a year, shoot skeet with 1 or 2 other guys, and I was a really competitive guy growing up. I played a lot of sports, and this was a really good outlet for me to kind of continue that competitive spirit. And it's been amazing for my life. I've met lifelong friends. I met my fiance. I've met a bunch of my soon-to-be groomsmen, and all of my hunting friends. IPSC kind of means the world to me. Similar to like any professional athlete, if you ask them about their sport, that's the way I feel about IPSC.
Mm-hmm. And that's an overwhelming sentiment I get from anybody who takes part in the hunting and shooting sports. It's a camaraderie, it's a family. You make so many incredible connections just from having a mutual love of chucking lead and copper down range in a safe manner. It's incredible to see. But in the other hand, we're seeing that brotherhood and sisterhood and that family environment being taken away with the stroke of a pen. And something I didn't know, you talked about in the first 10-15 seconds, was that you had to pivot at the first OIC based on a banning. So what happened there? What did you lose?
Yeah. So when I shot 3-gun, the first gun I bought was an AR-15 because that is the clear choice for a rifle in 3-gun. I can think of a few guys who use something different than an AR-15, but again, all of those were either part of the first ban or on this ban. So when I hear, the government saying these are not suitable for sporting purposes, and it's not even just 3-gun, but it's the clear choice for so many sports, whether it's 2-gun, 3-gun, IPSC rifle, brutality matches, service rifle. I can go on with the number of sports that utilize the AR-15 as the primary rifle, and everything that is used outside of an AR-15 is not used, because it's a better option. It's in spite of the regulations, So yeah, I lost my AR-15 at that time, and I just saw IPSC. I saw, okay, at the time I was just bad with a handgun. So I thought this is a really good opportunity for me to get better. And so I pivoted to that. And all the while knowing that, further down the road, there might be more bans. Whatever I get to replace my AR-15 might get banned in the future, knowing this government. That's exactly what we just saw happen. And, there was kind of two camps of thought of, I'm not going to buy anything that might get banned. I was in the other camp of, I got to live my life. If I love this, I want to be involved in it, right? And if I wouldn't have gone with that path, I wouldn't have the PCC titles that I have. I wouldn't have had all these matches that I got to shoot with all my friends, just with PCC and rifle. And so it was a pivot, and I feel the exact same way that I felt 4 years ago. Just, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of despair that my sport was being stolen from me for pretty much there's no data to kind of support what this government is doing. But I mean, at least 4 years ago, I had something to pivot towards. And since then, we've lost the ability to get new handguns. And now all of our competition PCCs are gone. And just as we were starting to try and bring IPSC rifle to this country, that's out. We're kind of in the darkest time as a gun owner that I've ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, when I started shooting, it was 2016. So my entire shooting career has been under the liberal government. So that's all I know.
They're continually throwing things on, like red flag laws and yellow flag laws. And one I want you to speak on, if you can, is that they're talking about large capacity magazines. How does that affect IPSC?
Yeah. Large capacity magazines, by their definition, are any magazines that can physically hold more than the legal capacity of the firearm. So to give you an example, because maybe not everyone, but a lot of people think of, the 30 round AR-15 magazine that's pinned to 5. But if you think of any handgun, there's a small handful of handguns that I know of that are shipped or have magazines available to be sold that are strictly 10 rounds, and there's no way you can make them more than that. But the vast majority, any of the Shadow 2, any 2011s, any, the Glocks, this 320s, any kind of handgun out there, they're all magazines that are originally the standard length that are usually crimped, right? So if they decide that they're going to go through with that, there's not an option for us. All of those magazines, if they're saying they're going to prohibit them, they're likely going to prohibit their use. Now there's no option outside of what we currently have, because even the gun ban states in the US or other places in the world allow those magazines to be used. So that is the standard from the factory of any handgun manufacturer. It's going to decimate what people can legally use, and it's pretty much gonna, that if that goes through, if what I think is their plan actually goes through, that will absolutely decimate the sport. But then on the long gun front, if anyone's seen my videos that I use my PCC in, I'm using long Glock 33 round mags that are pinned to 10, just like everybody else in this country, right? Whether it's an AR-15 or, a Glock mag or other PCC mags or other rifle mags, all of those are now, they're going to say you're in possession of a prohibited device. Whether or not they give an amnesty is yet to be seen. But I mean, that's why there's been such a run on magazines every time there's an election in here and down south, right? So that I think is a more tactical way for the Liberal government to say we're killing your sports entirely
without saying it, right?
Without saying it, right? Even the crimes that we see that are committed by gangs and by other criminals, they're always using guns and magazines that are brought in from the US. Like they're not even bothering to go to a gun store to buy a pin mag and, do what you need to do to make that, to restore it. They're just getting them from the US. So they solved the problem that didn't exist by doing that, and now they're trying to get rid of that entirely. So that that is one of the things that just infuriates me even further, that we've done everything that we can to abide by these rules, as ridiculous as they are, as unhelpful as they are, and as foolish as they are, and yet they're still going to try and go one step further on that.
What do you do as a firearms owner to kind of educate somebody who doesn't know about firearms? Like, do you have any tactics to have a chat with somebody like that?
I to this point I haven't really needed tactics. It really comes down to when I have a conversation with somebody who doesn't know much about guns and is not aware of my sport. I'll show them a video of what I'm doing, and the immediate reaction is, that is so cool. In my opinion, I think the general public in Canada, they're either going to be receptive, as is my experience, or they've already made up their mind that
That's right.
they've kind of ate up the propaganda of gun control and all this stuff, and they're not willing to listen anyway. What it means to be a gun owner is to have an elevated level of responsibility on you, and that doesn't matter if you're non-restricted, restricted, prohibited, whatever. As soon as you take that course and you actually care about what you're doing, that adds another level of responsibility to you as a citizen. And that is, I think, flown over people's heads, or it hasn't been made clear enough. And that's definitely my experience.
What does this mean to an IPSC shooter, a 3-gun shooter, or anybody that wants to use firearms in the future, especially as a competitive shooter? What does this mean for availability? If I wanted to go right now as a firearms license holder, I wanted to go start IPSC, how does that work for me? I don't have anything in my safe. Pretend that.
Well, we'll start by saying you're in the worst possible time in this country's history to do that. You're going to face a lot of challenges, if not outright not being able to, right? So, for example, if you wanted to become a sports shooter in IPSC, in the last year, PCC was your only option. Now that's gone. Handguns, that's gone. So if you don't already have a handgun, you can't compete in IPSC unless you can find a way to rent one from a friend or borrow one from it's not feasible. The sport is on life support, as I say, because the people in it, for the time being, can keep doing it, at least for handgun, no longer for PCC, no longer for rifle. But eventually those people are going to age out of the sport. And now I recognize that in less than a year, we're likely to have a new government and this is going to be overturned. But in the time being, you have no option, right? And every day I wake up, I'm going to be thinking, is there going to be another announcement saying I can't use my handguns, right? And that would be absolutely devastating, because like, we've put so much work into the sport, we put so much effort and time and money and hours of our lives that we can't afford to lose this. Like, that's not just, the competitive sport, it's the relationships, it's the travel, it's the entire experience of being a semi-professional IPSC shooter. So if you are trying to get into it now, I'm sorry that you're going to have to wait and hope that we're still in existence by the time that we have a new government.
How does somebody who's a firearms owner and intimately involved with the sport like yourself, how do you suggest the government address the public safety needs? Obviously, that there is a growing concern for public safety. Zero doubt in my mind, any lawful legal firearms owner wants public safety front of mind. So how do we address these concerns that we're seeing brought up?
So, I mean, everything that I've heard the Conservative Party put forward, I am on board with. And the amount of data that I've poured over in the last 10 years since I became a gun owner, that the one constant that I've come to realize that is a predictor for gun violence is poverty. So if you fix the country's economy, if you get inflation under control, now people can actually afford to live, and they're not going to turn to crime, and you're going to see crime decrease monumentally. If you decide that you're going to look at the 90 to 95% of illegal crime guns that are coming out over the border instead of the up to 5% of legal guns that are either stolen or acquired in some other way. If you focus on that 95%, that gun crime is going to go down. The evidence is so glaring. Like, this is not an area that you need to be focusing on if you care about public safety. And that's why I'm firmly of the opinion that they're doing this politically. It has nothing to do with public safety. And if it was to do with public safety, they'd be doing those things I was talking about: securing the border, getting the economy under control, getting inflation under control, bail reform, all of these things. And you will see in very soon after those policies are implemented by this government or the next, I doubt it's going to be this government, that crime will go down. And you see it across the world. Poverty is the number one indicator of crime.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, zip up those borders, deal with the repeat offenders in a proper manner, right? Deal with the mental health crisis, deal with poverty, and stop coming after the wrong people. There's such a better way of utilizing our police forces, our borders, our border patrol, and our resources than targeting what's essentially small businesses, right? Like somebody like yourself who potentially make money doing this. The firearms retailers that pump out tens of thousands of rounds every year for Ep3 shooters and 3-gun, et cetera, right? There's just such a trickle down effect that the general public doesn't seem to know. And that's by design, I think. So as we start to wrap this up, I want to throw this one right at you. It's kind of a softball, and I fear I know what the answer is going to be. So how do you think these bans and these OICs is going to affect the next generation of Ep3 shooter and 3-gun shooters, et cetera?
They don't exist. They can't exist right now. If I had someone come up to me, say, I think it's really cool, the sport that you do, I want to get involved, I have to tell them to their face, you can't. If you want to get involved in the sport, you got to move to the US, or you got to go somewhere else that's more friendly to this. If you want to be a competitive shooter in the action shooting sports, the practical shooting sports in Canada, you can't. Right now, it's not an option. And even though they've said in the past or in their bans, we are not targeting sports shooters, well, guess what? You've put our sports on life support, if not wiped them out completely.
Perfect.
The end.
That's unfortunately where I figured you were going to go with that. It's going to kill the sport. It's going to kill mom and pop businesses. There's just so many things that they're not addressing. So a huge thanks for joining me today, Taylor. I appreciate everything that you're doing to stand up for the sport shooters, hunters, and those that care about the firearms community, and look forward to seeing where this goes, and just reach out and let us know how we can help get the message out there.
Well, thanks so much, Steve, and thanks for having me on. This is kind of the only thing we can do right now is get the word out, kind of direct our passion from what we were doing to, we got to become political if we want to save what we're doing. So I'm happy to be on here. I'm happy to get the word out, and I'm going to continue to do so with Melody. So
awesome. We're a great big family that meets through things like this. So need to stay in touch.
For sure, man. Thank you so much.